Okay, now we're looking at the second part of the emissions trading scheme, the impact of business in Australia. So earlier on we looked at the first part of the risk management. Now we'll dovetail back in a little bit more on how this sort of will go together. Okay, so what we need to look at now is the main question is how to carbon proof or minimise the risk to our business and the cost of compliance of our business. So as with our normal quality, safety and environmental risks that we have to our business, this puts another level on to our reducing our risk management or the impact to our business that way. So from the emissions trading scheme, the way that it is managed, the emissions trading scheme will run by itself, and the recommendations will be put in by the Climate Change Authority. So the Climate Change Authority is more of the advisory body to the government for the reduction of emissions. So they're going to review the targets and see how close we go to our 2020 emissions target, which goes back to the commitment we made to the United Nations to reduce our limits. Now the thing out of that's supposed to, they're going to put out a report in February for their target for the reduction of emissions. So let's have a little bit of a look on what we need to do. So they're going to recommend the caps for the first 5 years and the trading of the carbon pricing mechanism. Now part of their part of what they're going to do is look at that, compare that to what we do for the United Nations. As part of our reduction strategy, we said we were supposed to reduce our emissions by 5% and 20% by 2020. So where we're looking at before, the report is due to be released by February 2015, so we'll have to be careful to keep an eye on that to see how that will go. We've got a pretty good idea on how that will work, but we'll see what happens from there. So underneath what we do with the United Nations Global Compact, we do an annual report to the United Nations. They review that to make sure that we're being a responsible business and carrying on with our business operations and trying to reduce the impact to our business. So if we're looking at what the Climate Change Authority will do, they'll look at what we're doing against the United Nations and then make recommendations for the lowering of the emissions threshold, which we'll look at in part 3. So let's look at the types of legislation that's going to be amended under the new ETS. So we've got the Climate Change Authority Act 2011, so that's where the Climate Change Authority came into play. The Energy Security Fund, so that's part of the funding for funding all the green projects to reduce our impact, so more of the clean energy. So that's underpinned by that Clean Energy Act. Now from the impact of these three from here, we'll see now it's going to affect the Fuel Tax Act, so there's going to be some changes to that, as well as the tariff. So this is where all the fuels and everything come in, which is going to be impacted on. And also from this part here is that'll go down onto the Clean Energy Bill 2012. And also when we're talking about the registry of units, so that's where the Australian units can be registered on the Australian register, and there's also an international register for the different types of credits, so BCS and stuff like that. Okay, and then the excise tariff of 1921, that's another one that's going to be affected, which will dovetail into all these other sections. So when they say we're just going to take a little bit out and we're going to change the carbon tax, and they're not going to do that, they're going to pull the carbon tax out of the legislation, that's fine, but then they're going to go run straight to the ETS. So that's where we're saying we're going to red Commodore